Thank you. I'll call to order the Committee of the Whole, Parks and Environmental Sustainability. I'm the presiding officer, David Carson. In attendance are council members Fields, Forsyth, Kahn, Kritzer, and Stewart. We have a short agenda today with 3 items. The first is the Southeast Redmond Master Plan Consultant Contract, and we have Parks coming to talk to us about it.
Yes, thank you very much. Caroline Chapman, Parks Planning Manager. And we will be bringing a consultant contract forward as part of the May 16th consent agenda. So that is an adjustment from what you have on today's agenda that said the 2nd. The contract is going to be for $75,000 to develop a master plan for the Southeast Redmond Neighborhood Park. We had a competitive RFQ process. We received 5 submissions, and our panel selected Berger Partnership to lead the master planning effort. Their RFQ submittal was in your packet if you'd like to get an idea of what they are proposing and their process. They will be developing a public involvement plan that's going to include community meetings and online presence, some activation of the Southeast Redmond Park, and visits to council and our Parks and Trails and Recreation Commission. They will also develop 3 concept plans based on community feedback and what we'd like to see in that park, and 1 final revised master plan that, once completed, we'll be able to use that for the design and development of the park. We will be sending a contract, or the contract, to council for review, and our ask is that it can be put on the consent agenda for May 16th.
So just a quick note about the contract. We received it a little bit later from our consultant than we anticipated. So I will be sending that first draft to you today so that you have it. And then it's not finalized yet. When it is finalized, it will be in your packet, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, but we wanted to be able to also work towards getting it on consent so that we could get going with the master plan.
Great, thank you, Director Hamilton. Let the record reflect that Council Member Anderson has joined us, and we are at a full complement now, so thank you. Questions would be appropriate here? Very good. Council members, any questions? Yeah. So Councilmember Kritzer.
Well, I'm definitely supportive of doing what we can to move the planning forward quickly, since I know this is a priority project for all of us. Curious, since we aren't seeing the contract yet, what are some of the things that you imagine will jump out in particular around what our requirements will be? Some of it shows up in the RFQ, but what you're going to be looking for when you review the contract.
Isn't it?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Are you referring to requirements of the park development or within the contract itself of what we're...
Of the park, for the planning process.
Okay, so yeah, we will be looking at what their timeline is. We're expecting a 13-month or so timeline for that, the different touches that they would like to present to the public, and we're hoping to have a really robust and inclusive engagement plan for that, and then the process from going from just general ideas from the community to a concept plan and then into a final master plan. Is there anything you wanted to?
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chapman. This was a really fun packet to read and to see how creative minds are thinking about the space that we have available and what community might want and how we're going to seek out what community wants. I would be curious, because we haven't seen the contract, and but it is the one that you are proposing to us. What did the rest of the conversation look like? Why did this one stand out as your preferred vendor?
Yeah, they scored really highly just with their inclusive approach on how they wanted to engage the community and have a really creative way to get that involvement. They're also very familiar with the city of Redmond and some other projects that they've done, such as the Redmond Central Connector and the East Corridor master plan. And so they were just very, it was a strong process, and we ended up interviewing 3 different groups, and they just really stood out for their creative approach in getting things done.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add that really caught our attention was that they drew a lot of attention within their proposal to how we can ensure safe passage to this park in particular, with the location of Southeast Redmond Park and its connection down in that Southeast Redmond area, just making sure that people are able to access it safely on those streets. And so we also really enjoyed the conversation that they brought about that, and know that that's a continued priority for the city and city council, is making sure that people are safe in our parks and trails and spaces. So they talked about, whether it be road crossings or trail connections, just how do we, and whether those be in this scope or master planned to be able to add on into the future. We appreciated their approach to safety as well.
Thank you. And I would just say, as by way of final feedback on the packet and their materials, the word I wrote down is seamless. It feels like, given the imagery and the words that were used in this packet, it feels like this will be, their product will feel very much at home in Redmond. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you. So I kind of see, since I don't see any other hands, so I kind of see this park as being kind of a potential starting point for a really interesting set of parks that we obviously have in the East Corridor. And so I'm excited. We've had the property since Woodbridge was developed, and it's kind of an open play field now, but it really doesn't have any draw to it much at all. My question, I think, was really around the kind of getting feedback from the community. Are we planning to have something like on site to engage, especially the community? Okay.
Yes, we are, and are hoping to, some of that will include kind of interim engagement that can be set out maybe for the summer, where people can come, start to experience the park, and then also be driven to provide their feedback.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions on this? And so we're going to see this in, 3 weeks or so? Yeah. Mr. Fields.
So will the volunteer aspect of Jason's work enter into some of this pre-evaluation and planning? Will he be part of coordinating some of the potential people who participate in this contract? They also could be converted to volunteers in the long run. Will Jason's work be part of this?
So Jason's work in general, we are looping him into the work that we do. Caroline has already met closely with him. So I think the short answer is yes. What that looks like, we're not quite sure. In a master planning process, there are a handful of opportunities for volunteers, probably less. And we really look to our Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission to be heavily involved in that. But we absolutely are working with Jason to ensure that we are utilizing his new position.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Any last questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Thank you. We look forward to seeing it in 3 weeks. All right, and our second item on the agenda is the City of Redmond, Lake Washington School District Interlocal Agreement Renewal.
Yep. Go ahead.
Please.
No, please.
After you, no, you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amanda Dummel, the Recreation Manager in the Parks Department. My memo today is the renewal of the interlocal agreement between the Parks and Recreation Department and Lake Washington School District. The purpose of this memo is to renew our current interlocal with the school district. We've had a long-standing relationship with them for joint use of facilities, first established in 1993 and then renewed in 2018. This agreement helps both the city and the school district meet the recreational demand of our growing community. Today, we hope to receive council approval to put forth on the consent agenda for the May 2nd business meeting. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So for the benefit of the community, any changes to the agreement that can be kind of highlighted?
Sure. Overall, there weren't a lot of significant changes, which I think speaks to how good the core of the original agreement was. A few examples of what we changed was processy development, just different people in different roles, the evolution of how we provide notice for cancellation, so our billing is more accurate. So overall, though, as far as the agreement with the understanding and cooperation of mutual space, nothing changed there. We're very eager to still support them of their use with shelters and meeting rooms and spaces and vice versa. We heavily use them for example, youth basketball. We use about 13 different school sites to be able to run practices and games, as well as now use part of the auditorium, say Old Redmond Schoolhouse. Even though that's a separate agreement with a lease, we still work heavily with them when we are growing so rapidly and our programs need to venture into their spaces. So they've been great to work with and a partnership that we hope to continue for a very long time.
Very good. Council President Forsyth, go ahead.
Thanks. So on board with this, just interested in learning more about how much these Lake Washington school fields are actually utilized. There's nothing in the document that really says like, we're using them 50% of the time, we're using them 90% of the time, just kind of so we can get a better idea of what capacity we need to be thinking about in the future as well.
Sure.
Oops, your mic.
The short answer is a lot, and we can provide you, we have actually quite a bit of thorough reports because that actually influences a lot of the other projects that we do as we expand our other parks, so we can get you some more detailed reports and show you the exact breakdown of school district use versus then when we take over and rent every hour after 6 p.m. at all the facilities, all the space is being maximized. Hence, I think that's what's supporting our growth in other areas is because we're seeing there's the need for cricket or expansion elsewhere. So yes, we can get you a lot of information on that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, and apologize if this is a stupid question. Sometimes, when the senior center opens, the senior and community center opens, are we expecting to see an update to this agreement?
No, we would not expect to see an update. We'll need to utilize this relationship with the Lake Washington School District even when we have this new gymnasium on. I'm assuming that's part of what you're thinking. Yep. In general, the agreement it essentially states, for the city, we have kind of first right of our spaces, and then support of school district activities would be there as well. So we would not expect to see an update for this agreement for another, I think it's good for 5 years.
Interesting. Okay, and so the capacity of the new facility is not really considered in the scope of the interlocal?
No, because the interlocal, doesn't have any dollar amount assigned to it. It essentially is the foundation of a relationship for us to be able to utilize, share these resources if and when we need them. So it really just, we look at this as an extension of our system, and they kind of look at us as an extension of their system. Their schools can utilize our picnic shelters, for example, if they have want to go do an art class at a park, right? They can use a picnic shelter for that. And then we don't have to build 13 gymnasiums because we can use the elementary school gymnasium. So it's really just an extension of system for us.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Great. Yeah. Council Vice President Kritzer.
I think it's great having this collaboration with the school district and being able to expand spaces when either of our entities need it. I noticed the Old Redmond Schoolhouse isn't listed in here. Is that because it's a separate lease agreement that we have with them?
Correct. Yep. So one of the biggest differences, if you're comparing this memo to 2018, that was combined, the lease agreement and the interlocal. They've broken off on different timelines. So I think I denoted that in this memo. That went, I'm assuming, I wasn't here at the time, so Lorraine, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming because we were trying out the lease for a couple of years because the school district probably wanted to see when they're going to need that property back, and then they did. So the front half and second story is the Early Learning Childhood Center. So that was a shorter timeline, and that has since been renewed in 2021 through 2025. The interlocal then took a different path and just expired this year, and this is a proposal for the next 5 years. So they both still exist. They used to be in one memo together, but their timelines now are separate. So we still have the lease at the Old Redmond Schoolhouse, and we have the interlocal. So they're two separate contracts. That's why you don't see it referenced as much in this particular memo.
And then ORSH, correct. And then with ORSH as well, another reason it's not really in the interlocal agreement is most of the spaces are early childhood, their learning center, which is a very different thing than an elementary school. And so the purposes of it are very different. So our uses of it, our collaboration in those spaces, they're mostly classroom spaces as opposed to shared spaces. So they do have an auditorium in ORSH as well that we are able to tap when it's not being used. But because of the nature of the early childhood center. It's just very different. So it's yeah, like Amanda said, a very different agreement now.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, what next steps are May 2nd?
Consent on May 2nd, if all are good.
Any problems with that? I don't myself. This is it really is a great relationship that we have with them. And I look forward to community organizations maybe even further deepening that relationship by, coming up with dollars for fields and things like that, where the school district has the property, we have kind of the management aspect of it, and the community has the need for more soccer fields and softball fields and things like that. So anyway, so that's to further that. So thank you very much, and we will move on to item number 3. Thank you. Approval of contract with Eastside for All. And we have Seraphy Allen coming to join us. And cadre of others.
Hello, Council. My role today is to introduce Lauren Alpert, our Senior Planner in Long Range Planning.
That's the tricky one, yeah.
Hi, thank you, everybody. So today we're asking the council to approve a contract with Eastside for All for $80,000 to support equitable and inclusive engagement for the Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan process. The council did authorize funding for equitable and inclusive engagement as part of a service enhancement in the 23-24 budget. And this contract is focused on engagement with community members who have traditionally not participated in the planning process and in community planning efforts, and also be valuable for building relationships with these community-based organizations. So Eastside for All, with the direction and support and coordination of staff, will also be working with a number of sub-consultants in community-based organizations to do specific outreach in communities in Redmond. Some of those groups include the Muslim Association of Puget Sound, the Korean American Resource Center, the Indian American Community Services, King County Promotes Network, and the Emotional Abuse Discussion, also known as TEAD. They may also partner with other community-based organizations as the project moves forward. And we're seeking council approval to place this item on consent on the May 2nd agenda.
Thank you. Any questions on the proposal? Any, Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about where that number came from for $80,000. What are we really thinking? I'll give you the context is,
Okay.
Why isn't it more?
Do you want to answer that?
So the service enhancement package that the council authorized was for $175,000. And that was for 2 activities. One is for the economic consultant for the incentive package for the centers, and that contract came to council, and that was 70. That took about 74 out of that bucket. This takes 80. I must be wrong on my numbers. 86. But not all of that came out of the service enhancement budget. The short answer to your question is because we're constrained by the total of 175, and part of it's been for the economic consultant.
Okay, great. So just to repeat back what I heard, we have a budget of 175-ish, something like that, and then we've spent some of it on another contract, and that's why this is the other half. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Council Vice President Kritzer.
I've lost my place. On the subcontracting piece of it, I was just curious. It mentions in the contract that, because obviously it seems like subcontracting is a key piece of what they plan to do, that they may not assign or subcontract any portion of the services provided without consent of the city. But it sounds like they're still a little bit brainstorming the different, like you mentioned some of the different groups, and it lists some, but they may want to do some more outreach. So can you just share a little more about what that process is going to be? And is it that we're in doing this decision, are we giving the okay for them to assign those subcontractors, or will they have to, are we delegating the authority to you all to approve those?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I mean, I I foresee it being, we have a list of sub-consults, but if there, as we move forward with this outreach, if there is a opportunity to do further engagement with a group or a community organization, we would want to be able to offer them some financial support for their time and their efforts in doing that work. So, it leaves that sub-consultant kind of open a little bit more so that we can allow that process to move forward. And they would be doing that in coordination with city staff.
And they would need the approval, so the approval authority would be city staff, if there's any additional subcontractors that they want to add after the contract's approved. They can't do it on their own.
Great, yeah, and I was just making sure we weren't putting it in place with a contract where we would be holding it up, where they'd have to come back to council if they were to, add a few groups or something like that. Although I will say in terms of report back on this work, it'd be great to hear which groups they engaged and even the breakdown of how we compensated those groups, because I often get questions from the community on how it is when we work with culturally responsive, community-based organizations, how we compensate them for being those partners. So I'd love to be able to see the report back on this once it's done, but great to have them have ESEF for All doing this.
Great. Councilmember Fields.
Thank you. So separate from the council oversight, can you just characterize or describe the oversight process? Like which city staff would be involved? Is the DEI, how are we going to approach our oversight and make sure that we're actually getting something?
I can jump into. So attached in the documentations is the scope that we have, which has a requirement of a certain number of meetings that they're required to have with city staff and with community. And then I think also making sure that they are working with some subcontractors would be a part of that. And then with the certain amount of community member feedback that we're getting.
But ultimately, who's the...
Oh, and then ultimately,
champion
the staff
of
would
this?
be these three here.
Okay, great.
But primarily, Lauren, I believe, is going to be reviewing the contract with them and meeting directly with them.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions on this topic? Great. Seeing none, thank you very much. And we will see, we'll see this on 2nd of May. Very good. On consent. Everybody good with consent? All right. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we have come to the end of our agenda. I did want to mention that our new off-leash dog park is, it's not temporary, it's a
Pop-up.
demonstration or pop-up, yeah. Pop-up, yes, dog park. And I'll be bringing Piper there very, very soon. Today would have been the ideal day, but my day got away from me. So any other topics for the good of the order?
Is that pop-up or pop-up?
I said pop-up, yeah.
Just mention that it's at Luke McRedmond.
Oh, yes,
Park.
it's at Luke McRedmond Park. There is parking behind the Hyatt House. Or what, that's still what it's called, right? All right, and that is for that park purposefully. With no other items on the agenda, we are adjourned.
And you're clear. Thanks.